Education in life is hard sometimes. My education kept shifting because of my condition. I'm not the only person in this kind of situation. Autistic people are being forced to conform to neurotypical standards. Sometimes neurotypicals will see us as a problem and they will try to fix us. They are forcing us to do things that we can't understand. Why would they force us to conform to their standards when we have our own way of doing stuff? Our brains may have differences, but we surely can work together. I had to face those challenges throughout my education, and throughout my childhood, I had no idea what was actually happening with me. I thought I was just like all the other children, but I also felt like all the other children saw me as different. My name is MasinaT. I'm 18 years old and currently doing a filmmaking course at Swinburne University of Technology. I was diagnosed with autism when I was 7, which is described as a lifetime developmental condition involving problems in social interaction, verbal and non-verbal communication difficulties, dislike of change, restricted and repetitive patterns of thought behavior, difficulty in speech, and abstract concepts. I came across challenges and adversities in the Australian education system, but I eventually got into university. I switched to another school, and switching between schools so often, and I wasn't really so sure why it was happening though. In 2006, at 4 years old, I went to Bell Street Early Learning Centre. I connected with some teachers and engaged in multiple activities.
He wouldn't listen when it was time to pack up, and there's just that he had behaviour problems and that he would have to do 3-year-old kinder again. When he saw something, he would just run straight for it. If there was anybody in the way, Masina wouldn't notice. He'd just run straight through the kids and get to the thing that he wanted. So because of that, he was labelled a danger to himself and others.
In 2007, in my prep year, my first school was Wales Street Primary, but I was only there for 2 weeks.
That initial period in senior schooling was just that real stress of not really knowing what to do and dealing with teachers who also didn't really know what to do. And generally what they would do with Masina, because they were dealing with largely neurotypical kids, obviously, Masina would invariably sort of just get excluded. So it was kind of stressful for us.
First 2 weeks of being in prep, he wasn't really talking, but after the first week of school, we picked him up and he just cried. He cried for the next 4 or 5 hours, and we knew something was wrong, and we talked to the teacher, and we found out that she did something specific that was just basically discrimination. So long story short, we changed schools. The principal wasn't that supportive of the situation.
Then I went to Thornbury Primary School. I had an aide who I connected with, but after half a year, she was replaced by another aide who I didn't engage with. We did do some good little activities, there was one matching game.
The teachers didn't really want, Masina was only doing 2 or 3 days. They didn't want to increase his days because of the amount of funding that he had. We struggled a lot to just get them to increase him up to 3 days and include him in things like swimming, sports and stuff like that.
I then switched to a specialist school called St. Paul's College in Kew. I liked it over there more, and in 2008 I did full-time at St. Paul's. Pretty nice. We did some fun activities, and there was this, and I did have some aids and stuff.
It was just very welcoming and understanding, and there were other parents there. Everyone just kind of understood what was going on. I don't know, it was very, very different.
Experience with St. Paul's have been pretty good, so we generally had more faith in the specialist schools than we had in the mainstream schools, so the idea of him going full-time at a specialist school was pretty good. When we initially started to get support from St. Paul's College, that's when it started becoming easier for us, because then we found we sort of had this advocacy sort of thing going on for us, whereas whereby St. Paul's could sort of be a go-between between us and the mainstream schools.
From 2009, in grade 2, I started a dual schooling program. I went to Bell Primary School for 2 days and St. Paul's for 3 days. Some teachers were nice to me. Dual schooling scheme pretty good for me, and it felt like a normal schooling thing to me.
We enrolled him into grade 2, and the first meeting I had with the teachers, they just told me they put him down to grade 1. They didn't ask me, they didn't anything, they just told me they put him down a grade, even though I enrolled him in grade 2. So that was very stressful. I called an advocacy group for Autism Australia or something like that. I can't remember what they're called now. But yes, I called them and I got a lady, an advocate who I spoke to, and she said that they weren't allowed to do that.
He had one particular aide who I think annoyed him a little bit when he was in primary school. He still talks about her.
When I was making non-verbal noises and stuff, I thought that I was actually talking like a normal person through my ears. Echolalia, repeatedly saying words or sentences from things or other people. I used to say words from movies and TV shows. The way I was perceiving stuff, I was communicating with echolalia, but also developing my language. My vocabulary was limited to 20 words at 5 years old, but I did make some noises and thought I was talking normally. Yes, I wasn't really aware that I was different to everyone else, and no one had said to me that I was different from anyone else. In 2012, I left St. Paul's and went to Northern School for Autism, a specialist school.
He'd go to Northern Autism for 3 days and the mainstream school for 2 days, and he never really liked going to the mainstream school, and there was always sort of dramas coming up.
In 2014, I started my high school years at Fitzroy High. In my media class, I was introduced to film editing software and became interested in learning it.
In high school, he had a couple of kids who he sort of was friendly with, and I think as he got older, he sort of was able to make that choice and realize that he just didn't really like hanging out with people because he found them, and I quote, annoying.
There were school students that were a bit more extreme with their playing.
But I was still worried because, you think bullying and all that kind of stuff. But he was so ready for it. He just took to high school like a fish to water. It was so great for him, and I think the school that we went to was a smaller school, and I think there was a level where we had to sort of teach his aides about Masina and his autism. By this stage you just kind of accept that you're always going to be educating the school a little bit about your child, because especially within the public system as well.
Challenge was always there. Sometimes we were lucky to have good teachers. One teacher of note would have been Masina's media teacher when he was in high school. Definitely he was very supportive of Sina. Masina's always been, as he went into high school, he's a very diligent student.
I found my talents and began to develop my skills in filmmaking. In 2016, I started a YouTube channel where I made videos about my life and music videos of songs that I liked. In 2017, me and my family went to Samoa for 2 years. I did a homeschooling program called DECV. I sometimes struggled with the work and I got my mother's assistance every day. It did feel a bit different from going to the actual schools itself. Sometimes I was stressed out with certain assignments because they require using the internet, and in Samoa I didn't really have much internet access. The internet is very expensive over there.
I think the first 6 months were probably the hardest while we got a routine going, while I found my feet with how to help Masina with his schoolwork. However, by the end of the first year and the second year, he was just smashing it. I think homeschool or distance ed was really good for him, just the way it's set up.
The idea of challenging Zena and Masina was always rose to the challenges, and he's been continuing to do that from when he was 4 years old. Your challenge is actually trying to get him to stop working rather than trying to get him to do his work. But yeah, definitely his experience with homeschooling was quite positive.
And I saw a big development in his schoolwork. His writing developed. I saw the growth in his academic areas as well, so that was cool.
But I never gave up on my confidence to get schoolwork done and pursue my interest in filmmaking. I didn't know that I was autistic until I was 10. Before then, I had no idea what was actually happening with me. I've been to a total of 8 schools, which seems like 8 steps in my education. My parents and me have been through many challenges.
Educators not really understanding autism and not really giving Masina the opportunity to progress within a mainstream school. Teachers sort of treated Masina as his behaviour as him being naughty, as opposed to something to do with his autism.
The teachers in special schools, they were very supportive and understanding of our needs, whereas the teachers in mainstream schooling, they were only focused on trying to teach children their style of their way of life and discipline. The children are so chill at specialist schools, but children in mainstream schools, they're like, some of the behaviours are almost out of proportion and sometimes difficult to understand.
I guess Masina would not have known about all the, the behind the scenes sort of things that kids don't normally know about. Management at schools were often very quick to see any problems that we had as a criticism of their school, as opposed to just issues that we were having that we were trying to resolve. Management would get quite defensive of the school as opposed to trying to work out any issues that might be going on. We've really noticed in the last, say, 10 years how there has been a shift. It's maybe incremental, but there has been a shift in perception of autism now in the public schools, where it's a little bit more, they have a little bit more awareness now. Whereas 14 years ago when Masina was first going in, it was pretty, there didn't seem on the face of it to be a lot of support. It would very much be based on individual teachers or individual schools that you got, and this isn't putting any sort of blame on schools or whatever, because I think generally they're fairly under-resourced with dealing with this sort of thing.
How my parents felt when they told me I was autistic. I wasn't really so sure. I dismissed it as a little thing about me.
We had a specialist that we would go to who diagnosed MasinaT. We would see him every so often. He said a way we could explain it was calling it expert syndrome, because when you're autistic, you usually become an expert in one particular topic.
And we sort of went through it with him. Masina just took it in his stride. He didn't seem particularly fazed by it.
I didn't really know much about autism, and I didn't really know what autism actually was. I feel very happy and awesome to be on the autism spectrum because I possess these unique characteristics that some other people don't have. I now feel confident in telling people about my condition. I found media subjects much more awesome than I was being taught in year 7. I was really engaged within the media that I was doing.
I guess we've learnt a lot. I have another child on the autism spectrum, so I'm using a lot of my experience with MasinaT, with school and stuff like that for her. I feel I'm a bit of a stronger advocate I can be than what I was for MasinaT. With MasinaT, I was still learning a lot.
It's different for every person, so I guess you more just learn about the person that you're dealing with, because you can't really. You'll have similar traits with autistic people, but there's no one way that you can deal with autistic people, which is just the same as neurotypical people, I guess.
Going over to the university and doing the things that I'm really interested in. And also, I get to ride the train over there too. I felt like that I already know my place. I feel that my future is going to be pretty awesome, and I'll be doing the things that I'm really interested in once I'm completed with university. But I just hope that when the pandemic is over, they'll be able to pursue my special interests much more effectively. And even though I might come across some mistakes and some challenges, this is all part of a learning process for me. I'm learning through every single big aspect of my life in university. When I was little, I liked looking at things differently, and I was visually oriented. Right now, my unique perspective has guided me to my interests as I continue to build my skills in drawing and filmmaking. I've been through a lot in my childhood, and hopefully I can overcome challenges in the near future.